Following the huge success of Bird Box, the apocalypse has returned to Netflix, though this time it's a swarm of prehistoric-style creatures that threaten to wipe out humanity. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers, I'm Jan, and in this video I'm revealing behind-the-scenes secrets about the monsters in The Silence, explaining who the sinister cult really are, and I'll talk about how the movie compares to A Quiet Place. Obviously spoilers ahead, so take care if you haven't seen the film yet. The Silence's pterodactyl-like monsters, the Vesps, are unleashed when an archaeological expedition opens up an uncharted cave system deep in the mountains. The Vesps are an undiscovered species that had been sealed underground, and so although they're blind, they've evolved an acute sense of hearing so they hunt their prey by sound. The movie's producer said the filmmakers created a mythology and backstory for the monsters where, after they got stuck in the cave system, the Vesps adjusted to living life in darkness with limited resources. They evolved and developed the ability to shut down their system into a sort of stasis, and they didn't need a lot of fuel to stay alive. After the Vesps escape into the world above, they have access to a lot more food and are therefore able to reproduce much more quickly. As Allie discovers when she and her father are at the pharmacy, these creatures lay eggs inside their victims. The Vesps' physiology and design is inspired by reptiles, bats, and birds, and they are meant to be a naturalistic species that could have evolved on Earth. Director John Leonetti explained that they researched species that have been found in caves over the years and used that to make the Vesps' biology very realistic. Their skin is translucent, they have wings, and they fly, but they also crawl and lay eggs like reptiles. A lot of scientific research went into the design, the creation, and the computer animation of the creatures, right down to the detail of every joint, every vessel, and every move they make. The filmmakers have also said the monsters are definitely not aliens or creatures from outer space, and they're named after the Spanish word for wasps, avispas, as they tend to swarm in large numbers attacking their prey. The Vesps' ability to evolve and reproduce so quickly is their strength, and as we see at the very end of the movie, even though it's reported they don't like extreme cold, some of them are now making their way north and surviving. Allie, who made it to the refuge, which is located in a snowy cold area, is now hunting down Vesps which have invaded the territory. And what's most scary is that the Vesps have been laying their eggs in the animals they've killed in the area, for example this wolf. It seems like a pretty grim apocalyptic ending, but Allie suggests there is a possibility that humanity could survive this disaster and beat the monsters that are slowly overtaking the world.
So will the rest of humanity evolve? Will we adapt to this new world of silence? And remember what it is that separates us from them. Maybe. I guess it's just a question of which of the two species does it first.
According to Allie, she herself is proof it's possible for humans to evolve. After an accident where she lost her hearing, she explains that her father was surprised that she adapted so quickly. And as a result of that, Allie and her family learned to communicate with sign language, which meant they seemed more equipped to live in a world where silence means safety and noise leads to danger or even death. The final scene, which has a touch of the Hunger Games about it, shows that Allie has figured out one way to kill the creatures is using a bow and arrow, which is obviously much quieter than a gun. That's also why earlier in the movie Hugh fashioned a wooden spear as a weapon for Jude to use. At the end of the day though, given how rapidly the creatures seem to multiply, laying so many eggs, surviving families would really need a larger scale solution such as the wood chipper Allie's father used earlier in the film. As well as the Vesps, The Silence also has a group of human antagonists who the family have to deal with. Following Allie and her father's trip to the pharmacy, they have their first encounter with the creepy Reverend who tries to get them to join his flock. The Reverend leads a group or cult called the Hushed, who've cut out their own tongues, and later they turn up at the place where Allie and her family are staying to pressure them again to join their cult. This time it's even more creepy though, because the Reverend reveals he's after Allie in particular because she's fertile. It's never stated explicitly, but it seems the cult may be collecting young women to use them to breed and swell their own numbers and repopulate the earth after the apocalypse. By the way, this is a change from the original book by Tim Lebbon, where the cult wanted Allie so they could learn to sign and communicate silently. The Hushed also seem to be part of a broader religious reaction to the unleashing of this apocalyptic world. At one point in the movie, when Allie's on her tablet, she scrolls past headlines that say religious extremists have been breeding Vesps to hasten the end of the world, or what they see as Judgment Day. They've also been burning atheists alive, and one preacher is reported as saying humanity is the plague and Vesps are the cure. In fact, when Allie calls her boyfriend Rob, he's coughing and looks like he's holed up somewhere trying to keep safe. Rob tells Allie his parents are dead, and I wonder if that's because they've been attacked by religious fanatics. The Silence also plays on the idea of this religious cult as terrorists when they send a young girl into the house wearing a suicide vest made up of cell phones ready to go off. Okay, so you've no doubt heard a lot of people saying this movie's a rip-off of A Quiet Place. Before I explain why A Quiet Place is definitely a much better film, it's worth noting that The Silence was actually adapted from a book written by Tim Lebbon, which was published before A Quiet Place came out, so it's not a rip-off even if the premise is similar. The way A Quiet Place executed the idea though is much better. It has a much tighter story focusing on just one family with barely any other characters or speaking in the movie, and so the tension in that film is really dialed up to the max as a family avoids making even a tiny noise for fear of attracting monsters stalking the land. The Silence, by contrast, is all over the place. The family mostly talks even when they're signing, and the story moves way too quickly, taking the family from the suburbs to the countryside and then onto the refuge in less than 90 minutes, with a side plot of religious extremism along the way. On top of that, each death in A Quiet Place has much more impact than those in The Silence. That's because The Silence's characters are underdeveloped, so you don't care as much about what happens to them. And although the religious cult side story is potentially interesting, it comes late in the film and feels rushed through. Also, many points which come up in the film are left hanging. For example, the fact that the electric grid and internet seems to be randomly working and then sometimes not. Is it because the creatures have been taking down power lines? I mean, we have seen them massing on the power lines. Or is it something else? Like both A Quiet Place and Bird Box showed, the idea of a creature preying on one of your senses can set up a very interesting horror movie, and The Silence, like those two other films, also has a good cast, including Kiernan Shipka, Stanley Tucci and Miranda Otto. Unfortunately though, they can only really do their best with the material they're given, which doesn't live up to either A Quiet Place or Bird Box. A Quiet Place also did a great job casting a talented deaf actress as one of the main characters, whereas some in the deaf community have criticised The Silence for using a hearing actress in the role of Ali, as well as for an inconsistent and sometimes unrealistic approach to both signing and lip reading, as well as the fact there's much more to being deaf than simply sign language. On the positive side, The Silence does a decent job with the design and look of the Vesps, and they do work quite effectively. On that note, if you're interested in monster design, tap here to check out my Quiet Place Monsters Explained video. So what did you think of The Silence and how it compares to A Quiet Place or Bird Box? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this and want more deep dives, subscribe and hit the bell to get all my new videos. Tap left for my Quiet Place playlist including deleted scenes and secrets from the movie, or tap right for another video you're sure to like. Thanks for watching and see you next time, yippee-ki-yay movie lovers!